But that said, Trump has said many complimentary things about him throughout the course of the campaign. So we'll see how this subplot plays out, Carol.
It's always interesting. Sarah Murray, many thanks to you. So all of this news comes amidst confusion over some of Trump's policy positions. Politico actually counted 15 flip-flops since Election Day. A few examples.
Torture works, okay, folks? Torture, have these guys. Torture doesn't work. Believe me, it works, okay? And waterboarding is your minor form. Some people say it's not actually torture. Let's assume it is. But they asked me the question, what do you think of waterboarding? Absolutely fine. But we should go much stronger than waterboarding. That's the way I feel.
Okay, but yesterday Trump told the New York Times, General Mattis said, I've never found it to be useful. Give me a pack of cigarettes and a couple of beers and I'll do better. And Trump went on to say, he said he was very impressed by General Mattis's answer. Torture is not going to make the kind of difference that a lot of people are thinking. General Mattis, by the way, is under consideration for Secretary of Defense. And then there's Trump's campaign promise on Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton will be under investigation for a long, long time for her many crimes against our nation, our people, our democracy, likely concluding in a criminal trial.
Okay, but Trump is changing his tune on that, too, telling the Times, quote, I don't want to hurt the Clintons. I really don't. It's just not something that I feel very strongly about. And then there's this about climate change. Back in March, Mr. Trump told the Washington Post, quote, I'm not a great believer in man-made climate change. But yesterday he told the Times, quote, I think there is some connectivity, something. So let's talk about this and more. With me now is Michael Grinbaum. He's the media correspondent for the New York Times. Jackie Kucinich is here. She's a CNN political analyst and Washington bureau chief for the Daily Beast. And Jason Johnson joins me. He's the politics editor of TheRoot.com and professor of political science at Morgan State University. Welcome to all of you.
Good to be here, Carol.
Thanks for coming in. So, Michael, you were in the room when President-elect Trump sat down with the New York Times. Mr. Trump also says his big, beautiful wall will now consist partly of fencing. So what are voters to believe?
Yeah, Donald Trump has a chameleon-like ability to kind of speak to the audience that's in front of him. And the Donald Trump that came to our 16th floor boardroom yesterday was very different from the one that we see out at rallies, even the one that spoke with television news executives the day before and by many accounts ripping into them, saying they were dishonest and unfair. The meeting with the Times senior personnel was much more civil, much more cordial. There were some tough questions, but it never reached a point of being, I would say, heated. And certainly we didn't see any kind of anger from Mr. Trump against journalists. He even said that the Times was a world jewel just hours after on Twitter saying it was a failing institution that treated him with a nasty tone.
Jason, this is just so hard to understand. Do you think that Mr. Trump is really softening his positions on some of these things, or is he just thinking things out and then he'll revert to his pre-election?
I think the political science term for this, Carol, is liar. President-elect Trump is a liar. There are things that he's saying. Look, we all know that politicians change their tone, right? It is. If you say at rallies that you're going to prosecute Hillary Clinton for engaging in inappropriate behavior with emails, and then you get elected and you say you won't, you're a liar. If you say that you're going to build a wall and that's a cornerstone of your campaign, then you get into office and you say you're not going to do it anymore, it makes you a liar. If you say that the New York Times is a horrible magazine that attacks you, and then the next day you come in and smile and you chat with people, this is problematic. And we're used to politicians not being honest, but not this kind of blatant changing of policy, attitude, and tone. I think it sets a very difficult, dangerous precedent. It's going to make it very hard for the press to cover it.
But Jackie, you always hear that once someone is elected president, things change because you're now confronted with all of this new information, and your views do change. Is it a simple case of that?
A lot of this is unprecedented because a different Donald Trump apparently showed up there than the one that was at Trump Tower with media executives the day before. So yes, he is getting new information. He's not someone that was steeped in policy going into this job. It was much more fueled by his personality and the emotions of his campaign. So he said, I talked to General Mattis. He said torture isn't good, so I guess it's not that great. So he's talking to more people. He's learning, but I think this is he started out with a very different negotiating position because he fashions himself a master negotiator, and maybe he's coming to the center. But the fact is, we don't know, and that was one of the things that he was attacked on from both Republicans and Democrats over the course of this campaign. That because he didn't really have any policy positions, it left him a very wide berth to shift, and that's what we're seeing now.
Okay, but Michael, Mr. Trump does seem to be reaching out to people with different points of view. For example, Nikki Haley, right? He's going to appoint her to a position, and that's a good thing, right?
Well, yeah, and even the fact that Mitt Romney suddenly is now a leading candidate for Secretary of State, someone there seemed to be no love lost between them at some points during the campaign, is a sign that he seems to be looking for different voices in his circle. Even his conversation with President Obama in the White House, came out and said, he told the New York Times yesterday, Obama, a great guy. I didn't know if I'd like him. We actually had a great rapport. We've spoken on the phone 2 times since the meeting in the Oval Office. I mean, talk about a whiplash-inducing statement. With Donald Trump, it seems like we're still kind of guessing a little bit. It's still not quite clear who the man is that's going to be taking over the executive branch in January.
But Jason, maybe that's what it takes to win an election these days. You just have to be, I don't know, very strident in your views, and then once you get into office, you adjust.
That's extremely problematic, and I want to point this out in particular if you're talking about what Jackie Say mentioned about torture. It's one thing for President-elect Trump to change his mind based on new information. If you want to torture and then you find out that, hey, it's not a good idea from the military, that's fine. That's what politicians are supposed to do. When you say you're going to prosecute someone because you think that they violated national security, that's in his power. He simply changed his mind. But I also think this, Carol, and I think this is really important. Donald Trump spent a lot of his campaigning demonizing members of the press, specifically Katy Tur, talking about particular newspapers, talking about particular outlets. And when he was asked by the Times, is he going to respect the First Amendment, he gave another sort of waffling answer. This is someone who attacked Hamilton, the play, last week. It's very important that we hold this president accountable. What he said during this campaign and what he says now really does matter. We can't let him get away with just flip-flopping all over the place because we don't know him yet.
Well, Jackie, I think the New York Times, they did an interesting thing, right? They said, Donald Trump, if you're going to sit down with the New York Times, it's not going to be off the record. Everything's going to be on the record, right? Which was different from when Donald Trump sat down with TV reporters. It was off the record, but that enabled Donald Trump to sort of control the message, right, Jackie?
Well, I mean, the fact that they had him come and be on the record was that's what he agreed to, and that's what they did. But I wanted to mention something else that was in this interview, and that was the fact that he doesn't think they're going to set up something to maybe shield him from his businesses. But this is one of the parts that I've found kind of disturbing, is that the fact that there really isn't anything concrete yet to show that he is not going to profit off of his businesses, are not going to profit because he's president. We've already seen from foreign press reports of maybe he's been talking to some of these world leaders about about his businesses, about shifting things that would help him. That is really problematic, and that is something that he and the campaign need to clear up as soon as possible.
And Michael, specifically what Jackie is talking about is President-elect Trump said presidents don't have conflicts of interest. It doesn't apply to presidents of the United States.
Yeah, that was a striking statement, and there were some attempts in the room to clarify or to ask the president-elect to actually elaborate on what exactly he meant. It didn't go that far, so I think we kind of just have to take the words verbatim. Similarly, about the First Amendment, are you committed to the First Amendment? We asked the president-elect. He said, I think you'll be happy. I think you'll be happy. It's, he leaves himself a little bit of wiggle room. He likes to be a little evasive on these answers. So I think, the jury's still out.
It adds to the drama, Michael. Jackie Kucinich, Jason Johnson, Michael Grunbaum, thanks to all of you. Still to come.